Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. You know that I like to usually talk about inspiring and motivational and things that unify us, things that connect us, that allow us to find the similarities. Yet, the past few months, I've had to have discussions that are more difficult, discussions that we don't all agree on, things that we'll never be able to really reconcile. And I've tried to have these more difficult conversations because I really believe in independent and critical thinking. That's such a Jewish value, an important Jewish value, to just be able to listen to the facts and to think for yourself. The world has become so groupthink. Everyone just kind of wanting to agree with each other instead of actually listening. Many of you know that I have gone over the past number of months on a listening tour, listening to people who disagree with me. I've gone to some mosques to listen. I've learned so much. It's enriched myself and my community, and I've spoken about it quite a bit over the past few months. Today, I want to approach another topic of this nature. I get lots and lots of emails every day. I try to answer every single one of them. If I haven't answered you, I apologize. But I really do try to answer everyone. And since October 7th, there are two questions that, generally speaking, I've been getting in some form or another more than all the others. And these are questions primarily coming from young Jews. And I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't want to reveal anyone's identity. But I get this so often, so you'll get the gist of it when I ask the question. So there are basically two questions that I'm going to ask today. Number one, what does it mean to be a diaspora Jew in a time where Israel exists? We've never really had a time like this in the past 2,000 years, where in history, we are Jews living outside of Israel and Israel exists. That's question one. Question two is a more nuanced question. And that is, and again, I'm paraphrasing it, but what does it mean to be the people who were chosen? A lot of people call the Jewish people the chosen people. What does that mean? I'm going to try to connect these two questions. And if you'll give me some time right now, I'd like to try to peel away the layers and talk about this in a way that I haven't talked about it before, and maybe in a way that you haven't heard it spoken about before. I don't see a way of rationally explaining the obsessive hatred that exists right now to Israel and to the Jews, who, while some Jews don't want to interconnect them, most of the world has interconnected. I walk down the street, I'm minding my own business, like you're walking down the street, but because I look the way I do, I get microaggressions and I get what I call pro-Semitic moments. People just randomly saying shalom and we're with you. I don't have any family, so I don't have any personal family in Israel. Most of my family has never been to Israel. We're with you. What people are saying is that Israel and the Jewish people today have become intertwined, whether or not some people want to accept that. And so I have no way of rationally explaining the obsessive hatred of both Israel and the Jews. Without the faith, and I'm using that word on purpose, the faith that the Jews are God's chosen people. Now, I know some of you are uncomfortable with that. I'm going to talk about that soon. Chosen for what? To make the world a place of goodness and kindness. Now, I know, again, this is going to conjure up because this is a difficult conversation. So just hear me out. The obsession with Jews, a people that doesn't even constitute 0.25% of humanity. This obsession is not a new obsession. It's been going on for almost 4,000 years. And actually, if I can say this humbly, it makes no sense. 500,000 people were murdered in Syria, including tens of thousands of children. And I don't hear one demonstration. Where's the outcry? Israel's trying to protect its children from being slaughtered, fighting an enemy that wants its own children to die, so Israel can be demonized. And yet, the Jews are condemned. There are traumatized, self-hating Jews. There are what people call anti-Semites, which I would like to say are Jew haters. These people even have the chutzpah to call Gaza a Jewish concentration camp. When Israel expelled every last Jew from Gaza in 2005, had the Gaza population not voted in Hamas in 2006 and chosen to spend all its resources to murder Jews, Gaza could have been the Singapore of the Middle East. They blame Israel for having checkpoints, which only exist because without them, there would be terrorist attacks on a daily basis. They want an airport in Gaza. Why? So that planes can murder tens of thousands of Jews daily? The obsession with Israel makes no sense unless you can appreciate the truth that the Jewish people are God's people. I'm even uncomfortable saying it. I have to become more comfortable saying it. I think this has conjured up within me and with a lot of people who should have been saying it for years, a more comfortability in understanding this. And I'm going to explain why. We were chosen to serve as a light unto the nations. People tell me this all the time. Oh, you are the chosen people. You are a light unto the nations. I hear this from so many people who are not Jewish. From Jews, I'd never hear this. Oh, no, don't tell me about chosen. You're looking for chosen, choose someone else. There's that old joke where Greenberg goes up to heaven after 120 years and he knocks on the heaven's door and says, God, I've got a question for you. And God answers the door and says, yes. What's your question? He says, is it true the Jewish people are the chosen people? God says, yes, it's true. He says, please choose someone else for a change. We're uncomfortable with it. We're uncomfortable with the chosen. But we're chosen to serve as a light unto the nations, a divine flame lit on the cosmic way. And because of that, we trigger the world in unimaginable ways. It's not easy for us to accept. The world knows it, but we have a really hard time accepting it. Virtually every other nation has perceived itself as chosen or divinely special. I'll give you an example. China, the word China means Middle Kingdom in Chinese, meaning that China is the center of the world. Japan, Japan considers itself the land where the sun originates, the land of the rising sun. The British thought they were chosen, and the Muslims and the Christians, and of course they see themselves as chosen. And they would love hearing it. But when you tell a Jew that you're chosen, the first thing you get, and I also have said this response so many times, me never, never, I'm just a human. If you ask a Jew, you're Jewish, what does it matter to you? I'm just a human. Of course, Jewish chosenness cannot be racist because Jews are not a race. There are Jews of every race. What's more is that any person of any race, any ethnicity, any nationality can become a member of the Jewish people. There are a number of ways of being Jewish. Most of those ways are being born Jewish, but you can become a member of the Jewish people. Thereby, you're chosen as Abraham, as Moses, as Jeremiah, as Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah, as Maimonides, as the chief rabbi of Israel. The same chosenness. Reason. Can reason alone explain how a hodgepodge of ex-slaves was able to change history, to introduce the moral creator that today we know as God, to devise ethical monotheism, to write the world's most influential book? It has sold more copies in more languages than any other book in history, the Bible. To be the only civilization to deny the cynical worldview and give humanity belief in a linear, in a purposeful history, to provide morality-driven prophets. I can go on and on. But all this done without God playing the decisive role in this people's history. Where was God in all of this? One of my favorite stories, favorite is not the right word, one of the most meaningful stories to me is a story that took place in 1978 between the Lubavitcher Rebbe and the Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel, two Holocaust survivors. They met. One a great rabbi, one a great writer, and maybe the face of the Holocaust for so many people in the 20th century. And Elie turns to the Rebbe and he says, Rebbe, how can you believe in God after the Holocaust? And the Rebbe smiles in his little witty, humorous way, says, what? You want me to believe in man? After all we've gone through, you expect us to believe that God is not playing a decisive role in this history? Yet we're still uncomfortable. We ask questions like, why did it have to be this way? Who needs this idea that one people is chosen? What a word. Much weight you feel on that word. It seems unenlightened. It seems not modern and progressive in any way to suggest that any people, and here we're suggesting that the Jewish people are somehow closer to God than anyone else. It sounds arrogant, elitist, sounds prejudicial. Why? And I think the reason is because I myself have thought about this for a long time. I think the reason is because we don't understand what the word chosen means. I'll explain it like this. The story that I want to tell you takes us back some 2 centuries, 1798. The Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi. He's the founder of the Chabad movement. Chabad become ubiquitous today with Judaism all over the world. Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi was the founder of this movement. The Chabad people call him the Alter Rebbe. He was arrested in 1798 and he's charged with treason on the basis of petitions to the Tsar by opponents of the Hasidic movement and of the Alter Rebbe. It was a devastating moment in Jewish history. He could have been given capital punishment, heaven forbid. And that would have been the end not only of Chabad, but much of the Hasidic movement. He was the chief defender. He was the intellectual advocate. He was the most influential figure of the Hasidic movement at the time. After 53 days in prison, he was exonerated of all charges and he was freed. The event actually every year is celebrated as the 19th of Kislev was the day that he was freed. And it's called the Rosh Hashanah of the Hasidic movement. It's called the New Year of the Hasidic movement. It marked a decisive victory and the onset of a new expanded phase in the exploration and the dissemination of the infinite spiritual depth of Judaism that the Hasidic movement stands for. When he was released, Rabbi Shner Zalman sent a short but powerful letter to all his followers. It's actually one of the most extraordinary letters I've ever read. It's published in Rabbi Shner Zalman's magnum opus, the Tanya. He's actually called by many people the Bala Tanya, the author of the Tanya. And it's in Igeret HaKodesh, chapter 2. Now, the Rebbe suffered so much as a result of his opponents. They persecuted him and his followers even before the arrest. Then came the arrest and the terrifying trial. Yet in the letter, he warns his disciples against any display of haughtiness as a result of the victory. He tells them not to denigrate, not to tease, not to show disdain to those who crave their downfall. I want to read you, I'm going to bring it up here. I want to read you in English a part of this letter. He opens with the verse stated by Jacob in Genesis, I have become small by all the kindnesses and by all the truth that you have done to your servant. This verse actually appears in the beginning of the Torah section of Vayishlach, which was the Torah reading of the Shabbat preceding Rabbi Shner Zalman's release. The Alter Rebbe is perturbed by the obvious question. Why was Jacob humbled by all the kindnesses he was shown? Why did it not bolster his pride? If God gave all this to me, I probably deserve it. And the Alter Rebbe conveys a profound idea. Something that I think hasn't been explained properly in the past. In the Jewish understanding, chosenness leads not to arrogance. Chosenness leads to humility. If it were some human king who chose us to be his special people, then your assumption would be correct. We would become elitists. When a mortal power shows favoritism towards a subject, that subject will become more arrogant as a result. The closer you are to the king, the more significant you are. And the more significant you are, the higher respect you feel that you deserve. But we were chosen by God. And the closer you are to God, the more you sense your insignificance. While being buddy-buddy with a human leader is going to inflate your ego, a relationship with God is going to burst your selfish bubble because God is infinite, and all delusions of petty self-importance are going to fall away when you stand before infinity. Being close with God demands introspection, self-improvement, not smugness. In Judaism, in Jewish values, God is the core of reality. Not God is the entire reality of existence. We are all part of reality. We are all in reality. We are all part of God, in God, in reality. I know that was too poetic for you. There's this organic oneness that unites all of existence, that unites all of humanity, all of the cosmos. And that organic unity is what we call God. Hashem Echad. God is one. Hashem Echad, God is one, does not only mean that there's one God and not 20 gods. It means that God is synonymous with oneness. The word God is another way of saying that there is only one. There is oneness that pervades all of existence. We are all reflections of one reality, of one core. We're all manifestations, yet diverse and definitely diverse expressions, but we're all manifestations of one singular reality. To be conscious of God means to never allow your ego to wrap you in its superficial imagination. You know what ego stands for? Easing God out, or edging God out, whichever one you like. Easing God out. When I do not realize my true greatness and value as a reflection of God's infinite oneness, I have to resort to my ego, to edging God out, to feel good about myself and to put you down. Becoming God conscious means that at every moment, I need not protect my ego as I become completely comfortable with my true reality as an expression of a divine light. The more God conscious I am, the smaller I become and the greater I become. On one level, I become nothing because there's nothing but the organic oneness, the absolute infinity of God, which pervades all. At the same time, I become the greatest. As my life becomes full and a seamless expression of the higher, of the unifying, of the integrating, of the eternal consciousness, of the eternal core of all reality. Maybe that was too poetic for you. Let me try to explain it simply. When you're close to God, it summons you to respect others more, not less. The more what I'm calling God conscious, the more conscious you are of a higher power, of a God. See, I want to just say this because I know what you're thinking. I think this all the time, that I don't like the word God because there's people who kill others in the name of God, and there's people, suicide bombers, that use the name of God. So maybe we should use a different name. Let's use Hashem. Hashem doesn't have the same visceral reaction that God does for me. But I know that you don't know what Hashem. Hashem is just the name in Hebrew, and it's a term that we use in Hebrew to refer to God. But let's try to, you know what? Let's try to reclaim God. I'm not talking about that God, the one that creates divisiveness, the one that creates hate, the one that kills people. Somebody once came to the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe and said, I don't believe in God. And the Rebbe smiled and said, I don't believe in the same God you don't believe in. Let's reclaim God. So the more God conscious, the more loving, the more charitable you become, as you're aware that God's light pervades every person and every creature, when in the name of chosenness, a person becomes bigoted or disrespectful or elitist or arrogant, they have completely missed the boat. They've completely got it all wrong. When you become aware of the chosenness, of God choosing you, it eliminates your ability to judge. There's no judgmentalism. We resort to that in order to protect our egos, to feel better about ourselves and our place in the world. Your success never equals my failure. I reflect one aspect of God, and you reflect another one. You hear what I'm saying? I reflect one aspect of God, and you reflect another one. This idea of the chosen people, of a nation of individuals who have been given the opportunity to sense God's closeness, to hear Hashem, I use that word, to hear Hashem's truth and relay Hashem's message to the world. I think that people can agree that it was the Jews that introduced the world to monotheism, that introduced the world to a system of ethics, of morals, that has shaped the modern view of life and its purpose. Think Judeo-Christian value system. Our legal system in the Western world is a Judeo-Christian value system. What came first? Christian or Judeo? Obviously Judeo. It's literally based on the ethics and morals of the Torah that shaped the world. And it's the survival of Judaism to this day that attests to the eternal value of this system. Anyone from any ethnic background can convert to Judaism, become chosen. We don't look for it. We don't go out and try to force people, heaven forbid. We love everyone as they are. There's 18 billion colors of the rainbow. Each person is unique. Each person in this world has a unique purpose. There's nobody that has come into this world before you. There is no one that will come into this world after you. And there's no one that is here during your lifetime that has the same unique purpose that you do. So be yourself. But for the sake of our conversation, anyone from any ethnic background can convert to Judaism and experience this chosenness. Jewish chosenness is not a gene. It's a state of the soul. I'm going to say that again. Jewish chosenness is not a gene. It's the state of the soul. Anyone who wishes to take upon themselves the state of their soul is welcome, as long as they're ready to have their bubble burst. Anyone can join a group of the chosen people, as long as they're ready to experience themselves as nothing, as long as they're ready to experience that nothingness. And I often think even those who hate us, those microaggressions that I get in the street sometimes, and more recently, more often, they're part of that nothingness. They're part of that burst of the bubble. Whenever you think, oh, I am the greatest thing that ever happened since sliced challah, you know what I do? I just put my hand in my head. You know what this kippah is? This kippah reminds me all the time. When I think my ego, when I think my head is the highest part of my being, kippah's above me, representing something greater. There's always something higher. There's always a God. That is a Jew. And that's why so many people loathe the Jewish people. We have been chosen to teach each and every person alive that each and every one of them has been chosen to serve God, to become an ambassador of love, to become an ambassador of light, of goodness in God's world. So when I look at our people, I ask myself, has our belief that we are the chosen people turned us into a murderous people who feel they have the right to abuse, to persecute, to target, to annihilate other cultures and peoples who are different? Or has it made us feel responsible to share, to give, to contribute, to help others? Has the idea of chosen people turned us into the people who are never introspective? Or maybe, if I can be so bold to say this, the most self-critical, the most introspective people on earth. You know how I know? Because usually the worst critics of Israel are Jewish. I think the true test of chosenness is how humble you are. And today, most of the Jews that I know have passed this test with flying colors. Humility, for so many of us, is so deep that it doesn't even allow us to accept that we're chosen. Now, most other religious groups are quite comfortable claiming that they're the best. Very happy to say we're chosen. But somehow, the Jewish people will do anything to say that we're nothing special. And that's what we call a chosen people. And going back to Rabbi Shneir Zalman, 1798, this is what he explained was the hallmark of Jacob. To the self-absorbed person, a kindness from God is proof of their own significance, of their own self-worth. To the spiritually mature person, a kindness from God is first and foremost an act of divine love. God is drawing the person closer to the higher power, closer to God. And the closer we become to the higher power, the more we realize that our own insignificance in the face of that higher power, in the face of that divine infinity. We are nothing, as Mark Twain, but a blip in the blaze of the Milky Way. This is what it means to think as a Jew. When you were blessed with a gift, when you were showered with a blessing, the first instinct of the Jew is katonti. I am humbled. This, the Alter Rebbe taught, must be the response to his followers, to the grace they have seen, to become far more humble, to become far more authentic, to become far more divine, to suspend our egos, to become channels for divine oneness. So, I'm going to finish off like this. And I know we have a lot more to talk about. but you've been so kind and gracious to give me your time for this long. When we realize that we've been chosen, we cultivate a healthy confidence that comes not from the ego, but from humility. It's about respecting our role as divine ambassadors for goodness and truth. Then we never duck to the pressure of those who want us to compromise who we are. We're never going to give in. We're not wishy-washy. The world right now wants us to be strong. The world wants us to know and to say what we believe and who we are. The world needs a strong Israel. If we want to eliminate evil, if we want to cultivate goodness in the world, we need to be very firm with who we are and what we believe. If you want to continue looking and inspiring yourself, I want you to open up a Torah to the first verse. The first verse in the Torah is Hebrew. You know, I don't like using Hebrew words because I know that it throws off a lot of people who don't know Hebrew. But the first verse in Hebrew is Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's the first verse of the Bible. For the past 1,000 years, there's a super commentary called Rashi. Rashi has commented, he commented, he said, for the 5-year-old, every single child in the Jewish community, when you start to study the Bible, when you start to study Torah, you study it with Rashi's commentary. When I started learning Torah, I started learning with Rashi's commentary. The first Rashi, on the first verse in the Torah, Rashi says, asks an age-old question. If the Torah is about the commandments that God gave to the Jewish people, why does it start with creation? It should start with the first commandment. Why is it starting in the beginning? God created the heaven and the earth. It's a book of commandments. And Rashi says, and read this Rashi for yourself. I don't have it in front of me, but I want you to read it for yourself when we have a moment. Rashi says it's going to come a time in the future. He said this 1,000 years ago, not 70, 1,000 years ago. It's going to come a time in the future when people are going to come and say that we're occupiers. Say that we don't have any claim and right to this land. You should say to them, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That the entire purpose of the creation of the world was for Israel. It's right there in the Bible. All the stories of Genesis, of Bereshit, everything there. It's all there. As difficult as it is for the Jewish people to accept that chosenness, we have to also accept who we are. And we have to be strong about our belief in God. We have to be strong about that land, that we are the true indigenous people of that land. I know that a lot of people today are just easy to just repeat and repeat. A lot of people are just so quick to just talk about a history and to literally wash it with whatever version of that history, the flavor of the week that they want to wash it with. But it's right there in the best-selling book of all time, in a book that has sold more copies in more languages than any other book. You can just read it for yourself. The beginning, the entire story, the entire beginning from creation. What does it do? It goes through Adam and Noah and Abraham and Moses, all, and the Jewish people, the Israelites, going from Egyptian slavery to where? To that land. The entire book is to show that that's our land. My great-grandparents, and probably yours too, where were they? They could have been anywhere. They could have been in Europe, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iran. They could have been Persian. They could have been in Africa. They could have been in Australia. They were there because they were exiled from their land. And they were exiled from so many other lands over the course of history. Yet, even though many of them had not seen their lands for almost 2,000 years, we always had Jews living in the land of Israel, even throughout the past 2,000 years. There was never no Jews living there, but it wasn't our state. It wasn't our land. But even though so many of our grandparents were exiled to places all over the world, 3 times a day, every single day, they would look, where is Jerusalem? They would take their 2 feet and they would face it towards Jerusalem. And they would pray 3 times a day, not once in their lifetime, not once a year, 3 times a day. They would pray facing Jerusalem, hoping that one day they could go back home. We never lost that. We never lost that. For thousands of years, we prayed to go back home every single day. Look at the prayers and what they say. Just open a Siddur, a Jewish prayer book. You're going to see all the prayers for thousands of years. When they had a celebration, when they married off their children, they would break a glass. You know why they broke a glass? Because they were in exile. It's that even during our greatest celebration, we should feel the pain of not having that land. That's been the story of our people. When we are comfortable with that, when we can say that proudly and confidently, then we can ask the world to agree with us. But one thing, for some reason, I don't know, I think it's our humility. I think it's this chosenness and this humility that we have. We're not even sure. Are we colonizers? Are we not? Is it our land? Is it or not? It is. It was given as a gift to Abraham. Go look at the Bible. Go look at the story. There's a lot of other people who are going to claim they're chosen, and there's a lot of other people that are going to claim that's their story. It's not their story. It's not their story. It's our story. And it's time that we claim that story as our own. It's time that we listen to it. And if we have to listen to it on repeat over and over again until it sinks into our brain, that now is the time. The world needs us to know what's right, be proud of it, and be proud to show it. Hashem should bless every single one of you. That you should have the courage to face adversity. That you should have the smile to look at someone, and even though they don't agree with you, to still be able to smile. The world has 8 billion opinions. You should be blessed that you should be able to be proud, to know your own and be proud of it. Wish you a wonderful day. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this, to continue this conversation.